My interest in it started with the Tabernacle. And because we learned, if you learn through the Torah every year, as all Orthodox Jews do, every year we come, if you look at the Tabernacle, if you analyze the 5 books of Moses, you will see that one way or the other, the Tabernacle takes almost 50% of the entire 5 books. In the book of Exodus, once you're past Mishpatim, after the 10 Commandments, the Truma, the last 5 chapters really basically entirely, and the book of Leviticus is about the temple rites, the temple, the sacrifices, the Levites, etc. And I figured out, though, it's approximately half the entire Torah, one way or the other, is dealing specifically with the Tabernacle. So I took obviously a strong interest in the Tabernacle. And I never built a model of it. We talked about it a lot. I moved to Shiloh, for 6 months because the Tabernacle was there. It's interesting, we left Spot to do that. And there was a well-known rabbi here, Rabbi David Reich, who was a Santer Chassid. We were friendly at the time. And I told him we're going to Shiloh. He says, I know you, Chaim, I know you, Clorfene. If you're going there, you're going to find something about, you want to find something about the Tabernacle, and I'm going to tell you, there's nothing there. You're going to be disappointed. There's nothing there about the Tabernacle. I mean, they got the place where it was and so forth, but it's he said, he was a big Talmud talker. He said, how did he know that? Because one of the distinctions of the Tabernacle with the temple is that when the Tabernacle was moved, the holiness didn't remain. That ground was nothing. It was as if it had never been there in terms of holiness. Whereas with the temple, in the one same spot, with or without the temple, it's a holy place. It was a holy place before the temple. When Jacob slept there and dreamt there, was a holy place. He said, and before that, Abraham. So we went to Shiloh, and he was absolutely right. It's a wonderful place, but there is no presence of the temple there, except for the people's mind, the memory. They built a very big synagogue that looks like kind of based on the Tabernacle, beautiful synagogue, and they have the place where it was, but what I was looking for was not there. It's only in Jerusalem that I was looking for, and even though the Tabernacle was never in Jerusalem, Jerusalem still is the place where the holiness is all deposited only there with the temple.
Do you have a preference for whether it was on the upper site near the car park or down lower? Do you have for the location of the Mishkan or the Tabernacle?
Well, they say they know where it is. It's in the lower area. It's below the lowest area of Shiloh. You go way down.
Yes.
I have 2 young, at the time when we lived there, I had 2 young sons that were both grown. And we went down there a number of times. Very, very long walk all the way down, no other way to get there. And we didn't have a car. And a long walk up, and it was very, very hot in the summer. But it was very exciting. There's no vestige of the Tabernacle there, except that was the place for 369 years that the Tabernacle stood. So.
And then you did your movie? That would be before.
The movie was already done.
Okay. So what sparked you to do the movie?
The original idea of the movie. I had a friend. He passed away this year. His name was Zev Kamen, and he was a man of means, a relatively wealthy man, and he always had a fascination for the temple. And he called me in one time, because we were very close friends, and he said, would you consider making a video about the Beis Hamikdash, about the temple? And I said, certainly, I'd love it. And he put me to work to research it, and I did quite a bit of research. And then I spent an afternoon with Yitzchak Ginsburg, Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg, you know the name?
No,
very, very famous rabbi in Israel. And we went through all the materials I recorded him for a couple of hours. And based on that and that interview and he's credited at the end of the movie, by the way, and my own research, I wrote a script of a half-hour video script. And I went back to my friend Jeff Kamen, who had commissioned me to do this, and he wanted certain changes. His wife actually wanted that were impossible to do. It was impossible. They wanted, so you got to see bulldozers up on the Temple Mount. I said, there's no way we're going to see bulldozers on the Temple Mount. They said, but we have to. I mean, you got to see that. They're building the temple. I said, well, okay, look, here's the thing. This is the script. You have an option to pick it up. I'm giving you a month. You have an option whether we're going to do it together or not. There's going to be no bulldozers. So he passed on the option. He didn't do it. And I found somebody in New York who liked the script and liked the idea, and we produced it together, and that was it. And that was, as I said, 1988, 87, 88, 99, 89.
Had you done work like that before, or was it new for you?
No, my video work, yes. My background was in radio. I have not always been, a rabbi. I worked for Mel Blanc, the voice of Bugs Bunny and all the cartoons. So for 10 years, I was very close to, brought up in his home to some degree, in high school and college anyway. And his son and I were best friends. And I wrote and produced radio commercials and some television commercials for 10 years with him. And then I started searching for God, and I found my way after many, many false starts.
So what was the start for you searching?
I started my search. I was in New York City, Manhattan. I had a radio production company doing humorous radio commercials and program features. And one night, it was in the 60s, I was kind of the 60s guy. So one night I was feeling no pain, if you know what I mean. And it was raining, very hard rain. And I just sat down on my typewriter and I wrote, but the first instance of hype is, in quotes, but of the tree of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat. I said, that was the first hype. And I was an advertising guy. But hype to me meant like promotional truth, not the real truth. Something you want people we would call it pshuto today. His truth, his truth, not the truth. And so when I wrote those words, it was almost like God was saying, oh, is that true? Let's find out. And from that point forward, I started searching. I quit my whole business. I dropped everything. I had a pretty good career at the time. And I moved to New York, to California, to Malibu, little shanty. And I started meditating and learning and seeking my way to find God, because I did not like my life as an advertising writer. I thought it was not high enough level to live that way. So that started everything. And it took me 6 years. As I said, I was a 60s guy. I searched everywhere for 6 years. And finally I found my way into an Orthodox Jewish synagogue for the first time after 6 years, believe it or not. I'd never been in an Orthodox synagogue. And that was it. It was on Yom Kippur. And I stood, I put the towels over my head, the prayer shawl, and I cried for 12 hours. And that was the end. That was it. I've been there ever since. How I found the temple, as I said, it was somebody put me onto it. He wanted me to write a script.
There's an interesting connection that I came across last year doing some research for a talk I did, that we've got the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Gan Eden at the start. But the second time we read of knowledge is Betziel was defining that when he designed the tabernacle, when he put the tabernacle. So we've got the connection between everybody's striving for learning, but the first time is in Gan Eden, but the second time we've got about learning is to do with the design of the tabernacle. So it's interesting, that connection. Were you aware of that?
Yeah. Well, not exactly that way, but the connection between the two, for sure. For sure, at Mount Sinai, they were raised above the death. They were raised above the sin of eating the fruit of the tree, and above the resultant punishment of death brought into the world, they would never have died. Everybody was healed and everybody was beyond death until they worshipped the golden calf, and then it just returned. So I want to say that actually the Jews have a little bit of a different path than the rest of the people in the world, is that everybody else is still under the ban of eating the fruit and being kicked out of the Garden of Eden. With the Jews, but we're now under the ban of idolatry, because what happened with the golden calf was specific. It was not specific in the Garden. In the Garden of Eden was just not obeying God in general terms. But what we did, I'm a Levite, so I didn't do it. But is worship the golden calf. But the same thing. Death came back into the world, and that's it. So we're still working on that one. Some 3,340 years later.
So you want to talk a wee bit about what we touched on before about the spiritual significance of even being elevated higher than what Shlomo Melech was with the coming temple.
Yes. Okay. So there have been two temples. There have actually been three temples, but the second temple has two faces. There are two second temples, and there was a great Kabbalist who wrote a book called Mishkan Elyon, the Heavenly Temple. I think it's translated in English.
Yes, it is.
Called
I've got a copy.
Secrets of the Future Temple.
Yes.
Alan Greenbaum translated it. And so it says there that the first temple was built from the wisdom of Solomon. Now this we know. Solomon was granted a gift of wisdom from God, divine wisdom, superhuman, not human, not just human wisdom. And from that, he was able to understand the pathways in heaven, and he built the first temple according to his wisdom, the wisdom of Solomon. And it says in the verse in the book of Kings that he had greater wisdom than any man who ever lived. And the second temple, when the first temple was destroyed, Solomon's temple was destroyed, and 7 years later he built the second temple. Zerubbabel and the high priest Yeshua, and there were prophets Zechariah and Haggai and Malachi also. It was also with the wisdom of Solomon, because it was basically based on the first temple. They made a number of changes. But the third temple, which was given, the design of it was given to Ezekiel by actual prophecy.
Do you want to just jump back to the second temple, about how the design of that came?
Also, the second temple was not by prophecy, it was by the Holy Spirit, by Ruach HaKodesh, but it was much lower level than the first temple. And the Shekinah, the holy presence of God, did not exist in the second temple. It was an empty Holy of Holies. You did not have the Ark of the Covenant standing on the foundation stone. And in between the wings of the cherubim on top of the Ark is where the presence of God was, in the Tabernacle and in the first temple. And it says in the Torah, Hashem says to Moses that from between the wings, this is where I will meet with you. You will come, I will speak to you from that. And from that point, all the prophets of Israel for the next 980 years until the ark was hidden away, what came from that point. God spoke to the prophets from between the wings of the cherubim on top of the ark in the Holy of Holies of first the Tabernacle and then the first temple. In the second temple there was no ark because there was no revealed presence of God. It was a consolation to the Israelites. So that's the second temple. And it was, as I said, two second temples. The first temple, when they came back from Babylonian exile, Zerubbabel and Yeshua, the high priest, built a temple. It stood for 332 years and was in terrible disarray. It was a very holy temple, but it was not such a great, beautiful, fancy temple. It was the king of Persia supported him, Darius, but he was afraid one day the Jews might rebel, So it was built temporarily. There were courses of wood between the stones that were covered, so it could be burnt down, so the temple could be burnt quickly. So 332 years later, when Herod was the king of Israel, of Judea, because that's all it was, he took that temple down completely, removed its foundations, and built the temple that we know of today. All the images we see of the temple today, all the posters and everything, whatever you see, is basically Herod's temple. It only stood for 80 years. And it was a place of corruption, and it was actually a place that was illegal against the halacha of the Jewish law from the Torah. Because you're not allowed to expand any aspect of the temple courtyards without a king, which he was a king, but he was not a kosher king, he was not even Jewish. And you must have the Urim V'Tumim, the breastplate from the high priest, that has the oracle, that when you ask questions, that lights up and answers from God. And they did not have that in the second temple. But nobody could say anything to Herod. He ruled with ruthlessly. He killed the entire Sanhedrin. He executed one time. And so he built it anyway. So the second temple that we know, Herod's temple, was never kosher. It was never okay. It was always corrupt. It was always a problem. And that's what the Romans destroyed in the year 70. 70 of the Roman era. So now, what we're waiting for, what we're hoping will come down, it's a disagreement whether it's going to come down miraculously from heaven or we're going to build it, is the prophecy in the last 9 chapters of Ezekiel, actually the chapters 40 to 45 effectively. And that is beyond the wisdom of Solomon. And it is said to be the source of the wisdom of Solomon, which is Keter, which is undifferentiated intellect. It's not, wisdom is already specific. This is the source of wisdom. It's undifferentiated divine intellect. That's the level of this temple. And it must be remembered that the temple is the source of everything. In other words, the Torah, both the written Torah and the oral tradition, the oral Torah, are housed in this building. Only in here. Only in here. When the temple doesn't stand, you don't have the written Torah, you don't have the oral Torah. What do I mean by that? In the Holy of Holies, in the Ark of the Covenant, was the 10 Commandments, the 2 tablets. And either inside or at the side, depends, it's a discrepancy in the verse, is the actual Torah written by Moses, the Torah scroll by the hand of Moses. It was put there and kept there, and will be returned there in the third temple. So you have the written Torah itself, the essence, the actual written Torah is in the Holy of Holies of the temple. Sitting at the distance on the northern wall is the Sanhedrin, and that is the source of the oral Torah. They determine the law. That is effectively the Supreme Court of the Torah. So you have the oral Torah and you have the written Torah within the temple. And that is really kind of a symbolic to tell you that the source of everything is the temple. When the temple is not standing, this world is darkness redoubled every single day. For 1,900 and I think 47 years, something like that, since the temple was destroyed. So you say that there's so much in the temple, it's infinite, literally true. Once you really get into the temple, you see that...
it's like an ocean, really, isn't it? Like being dumped in the middle of the ocean.
Right. Because what's coming out of it, and of course the thing about the third temple is that what's coming out of the third temple did not exist in the first and second temple. It says in the 47th chapter of Ezekiel, from under the threshold of the Holy of Holies in this temple, there will be a stream of water. It will emanate, a very fine stream of water. It will flow through the temple and outside, and it will expand. And after several expansions, it becomes a raging river that splits into 3 tributaries. This is water from the Holy of Holies, remember. the three tributaries. One goes north to the Sea of Galilee, the Yam Kinneret. The other goes east, southeast to the Dead Sea, and the third one goes to the Mediterranean. The three tributaries, and this water will heal all the waters of the world, which we know the oceans and the rivers and the lakes of the world will heal. It will heal everything. This is prophesied in Ezekiel. And on the banks of this river will grow trees whose leaves will heal every wound and illness in the world. And people will come from the whole world to come to Israel, to come to Jerusalem and this river to be healed. They will drink from the water and have these leaves working, and everything will be healed in the whole world. And the whole world will come, and then to thank God, they will come up to the temple to thank God and to pray to God. And basically, Israel will be the Garden of Eden, Rico, and it will be open to the whole world. People will be coming by. If Israel knew the tourist business they would get, they would build this temple in a million. There would be 50 million tourists a year, at least. And more than that. Las Vegas has 50 million. It would be 100 million a year. And that's
well, it's a place of life, isn't it?
It's God returns to the earth like he was in the Garden of Eden. He was in the Garden of Eden, talking to everybody. Everybody will have access to Hashem. More than others, prophecy will return.
But prophecy is linked with the house, though, isn't it? As you touched on before.
It's absolutely. It's not just linked with the house. It's very specifically linked with the Ark of the Covenant, which is linked with the house. Yeah.
It's fascinating.
So this is what the whole world seems to not care about.
So there's discussion or uncertainty about how the house will come to be and Moshiach's connection to it. Can you explain a little bit about it?
I can show you where Mashiach walks when he comes into the temple. It's the 45th chapter, 17th verse. And it shall be the prince's obligation to bring the burnt offerings and the flour offering and the wine libation on the festivals and on the new moons and on the Sabbaths. So the prince, when he calls him the prince, we said this is Melech HaMashiach, this is the Messianic king. And what he will do, he will come in with the eastern gate, with where most people can enter by the southern, the northern, and the eastern gates. And he comes in the eastern gate, and he walks across this pathway in the outer courtyard. And imagine the excitement of the people. The king walks in and comes in, and he climbs these stairs to now this gate is never open. It's always closed until the Messiah, the Mashiach, enters the temple. He's the only man on earth who's allowed to walk through this gate. Even the high priest can't walk through this gate. When he enters the temple, the gates are open by the Levites, which I am one. And he walks across, he climbs these 8 stairs to the gateway to the inner courtyard and prostrates himself, bowing to God, bowing to Hashem. And if he has a sacrifice to bring, he then enters and he sits while his sacrifice is being offered. He's the only man in the world who's allowed to sit in the inner courtyard. And then if he doesn't have a sacrifice to bring, he bows to God and leaves. And the gate remains open for the rest of the day. Then all the people can come up and also bow to God at that point. But that's the only time this gate is open, is when the Messianic king enters the temple.
So why would he bring a sacrifice?
He brings he's commanded to. He brings a sacrifice on the peace offering on the Sabbath. Wait a minute. On the Sabbath and the new moon, Rosh Chodesh, which is a minor holiday.
So he's also
it would be the prince's obligation to bring the burnt offerings, so that's a completely consumed offering, and the flour offering and the wine libation on the festivals and on the new moons and on the Sabbaths at all appointed times of the house of Israel. He shall bring sin offerings and the flour offering and the burnt offering and peace offering along for the house of Israel. So So the king, he doesn't offer it, only the high priest can do it, but he's the one who brings the offering. It's from his wealth.
So how's the Moshaich connected to the rebuilding of the house, or?
Well, he will be credited with rebuilding the house, one way or the other. Either if it's going to descend from heaven, we will also build aspects of it, because the gates, will come down without his gates, and we'll build the gates. And he will be the builder of the temple. But you know, this gets a little complicated, because you know, we say there are two Mashiachs. There's Mashiach ben David, which is the one that everybody's the Mashiach, and there's Mashiach ben Yosef, who precedes Mashiach and fights the wars of God, and leads the people into, because the man, because Mashiach ben David is a man of peace, but Mashiach ben Yosef has to fight the wars of Hashem before, and we're in the middle of that process right now. And we're doing pretty well.
So will there be two figures at once, or one die and the other replace the other?
There's so many opinions. It's not just that there's so many opinions, it could go either way. In fact, we're told to pray for the fact that God will protect Mashiach ben Yosef, because the tradition is he dies, and he doesn't have to. But he needs the prayers of Israel to not to die, and people don't even know about this. You know?
Because, yeah, so there could be two anointed figures together then?
It wouldn't be anointed the same way. Only the king from the house of David is truly anointed. The king from the northern kingdom also anointed, but it was something else, different oil. It was not the holy anointing oil. And only the king of the house of David and the high priest are anointed with the anointing oil. Those are the only two men in Israel who are anointed. And that's what Mashiach means. It means anointed. Mm. So he is anointed, and but the original oil that Moses made will be brought out in the same hiding place that the ark is, and the Torah scroll, and the rod of Aaron, and.
So it would make sense that the whole tabernacle or Mishkan was with that as well, wouldn't it?
Right, and that there was definitely an opinion that the entire tabernacle itself was hidden away in that same mountain. And there's a book of Maccabees, the second book of Maccabees, the Apocrypha, says that Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah, took these things to Mount Nebo, where Moses is buried, which is in Moab, which is on the other side of the Dead Sea. We can go to it, we know where it is. And it's hidden there in a cave in that mountain, and no one will find it until Elijah the prophet, I believe, is the one who's supposed to bring it out and restore it. Mm. And the last thing you want is to be told, hey, they got the Ark of the Covenant, let's go take a look at it. That is the last. If somebody tells that to you, you run the other way. Because anybody who looks at it dies. Because our soul, the soul of man is the source, will be there. And your soul just, you're not going to die with horrible agony, but your soul just can fly out to the source. So nobody looks at that. Nobody ever saw it. Except even the priests that covered it so the Levites could carry it, they didn't look at it when they covered it. And then it was always covered when it was carried. And other than that, it was in the Holy of Holies. And only one man, the high priest, one day a year, Yom Kippur, walked in there and offered the incense and the bull and the goat. And whether he looked at it or not is not, I never saw it recorded. But if he did, he was plenty scared when he did it, I'll tell you that.
So I guess the logic of that was Moshaich would have the ability to look at that and to take the things out of it then.
Nobody has looked at it.
Not even Moshaich?
To look at it?
Well, to uncover it then, it would be logical to be connected with Moshaich.
Yeah, but still Mashiach is still a soul in a body, like it or not. And that soul can leave that body. You do not want to look at the Holy Ark, because the Shekhinah, the presence of, it isn't the presence of God on this earth. It's the presence of God in the highest heaven, but undiminished. Undiminished. Doesn't fit in this world. So what's going to happen when the soul comes in the presence, when the body, soul in the body comes in the presence of that, the soul comes out of the body, and that's it. It's the end. It doesn't go back. And God can put it back, but it's not what happens. So that's basically that's Moshaich in the temple. The heart and center of the temple is the outer altar. It's not the Holy of Holies. People make a mistake and presume that where Abraham brought up Isaac was in the Holy of Holies. No, it was the place of the altar, where Jacob slept and dreamed and saw a ladder rising to heaven. That was the place of the Holy of Holies. And the foundation stone is what we say he slept under as a protection. That right now, there are steps going down underneath the foundation stone. There's a little room there. There's a picture on YouTube of it. So, and it would protect somebody from the wild beasts. So that's the two central points. Those are the 2 points of the Holy Temple that must be the same in all temples. The place of the outer altar, the great sacrificial altar, and the place of where the Ark of the Covenant sits, which is on the stone. So it's on that very stone, and here it's on that very spot. Now you bring up an important point. The second temple's outer altar was not exactly the same place as the third temple's outer altar will be. The second temple's outer altar was in the wrong place, intentionally. There's a very complicated reason I don't want to go into, but basically it had been moved to the south. So, however, we have a tradition that the outer altar, the great sacrificial altar, must be in exactly the same spot as it always was. From the third temple, the second temple, the first temple, that is where Abraham brought, that is where Cain and where Abel brought his sacrifice, and that is where Noah came and brought sacrifice after the flood, and that's where Adam Arishon, from that place, brought sacrifice after he was created. So how could it be that if the tabernacle, if the altar has to be in always exactly the same place, and if it isn't, everything you bring on it is not accepted, it's invalid, and there's no, that's not just a sin, that's worse than a sin. That brings spiritual contamination into the world from the highest level of the heavens. Everything in the world is ruined by that.
So that was what happened in the second temple?
No.
No.
So even though it's not in the same place, it is in the same place. What do I mean? It only has to have an overlap of 1 square cubit.